Okay, so we're going to get interrupted a bunch today because of pictures. I don't know the exact schedule of how they're going to call you guys out and stuff. We'll go ahead and get started. Goal today is to understand the primary parts of a PC. We're going to go through all the different parts, and all these different parts we're going to go way more in depth in during the course of the year. Okay, we're not going to say everything about the motherboard, just the basics. And then there's a whole chapter on the motherboard. There's a whole section on the CPU. There's a whole section on memory. So all these things we're going to go much deeper into than today. The idea today is big picture, okay, or of this section, not just of today, is that it's a big picture of everything. Okay, so this is a typical motherboard. The motherboard is what connects everything together. Okay, so you can think of it kind of like as the nervous system, or the circulatory, maybe you don't even want to look at, system of the PC. Okay, if it's not connected to the motherboard, it's not part of the PC. It's not connected to the motherboard, it's not part of the PC. It's not connected to the motherboard, it's not part of the PC. It's going to be a fill in the blank. It sounds exactly like that. It's not connected to the blank. It's not part of the PC. Everything connects to this. Every single thing that you ever use with your PC is connected to this. You plug it in USB, it goes right in the back. It's one of the USB ports. It's connected to the motherboard. You plug in a video connection. It either connects to the video port on the motherboard or to a video port that's plugged into one of these expansion cards, therefore still plugs in. If you use a wireless keyboard, like I have, it's wirelessly connected to this receiver. Just plugged it to the USB, which is plugged into the motherboard. When you save stuff in your hard drive, it's plugged into a port right there.
Interruption. This time, staff, if you would please send our juniors, last names A,
see now we're already
E,
if
every
you're
junior,
all the
A
same
through E. All
grade,
students will have their picture
not
taken
yet?
today, whether you're purchasing
Okay.
package or not.
So
but this time, all
everything
juniors,
connects to the
last
motherboard.
name A,
It is the biggest
through
circuit
E,
board.
so that should be Alexis Acton all the way through to Johnny Estep. Should now report to the middle school cafeteria for the picture.
It's the biggest circuit board on the PC. Okay? It is what holds everything together. And it's also what, whether you know it or not, decides everything else that can connect to the PC. Okay? Kind of like, you know, we'll go back to a fable, you know, what do you build your house on? Do you build it in sand? Do you build it in stone? Three little pigs? Do you build it of straw or bricks? This decides everything else. Okay? This part of it is where the CPU goes, and it's very definitive. In other words, I have a certain number of PCs that can plug into that kind of connector on that particular motherboard. You can't just put anything in. Okay? I have certain kinds of hard drives that can plug into those connectors right there, and they're of specific speeds. And if you get a crummy motherboard that only goes so fast, the computer only goes so fast. Okay? So the motherboard is the least known part by most people. If you go to Walmart and go to pick out a PC at Walmart, there's nowhere on there probably even lists anything about the motherboard. But it decides everything you do after you make the initial purchase of the PC. Can I upgrade my memory? Can I put in a cool gaming video card? Or no, when I buy that one at Walmart, it's closed up. I don't like you opening up the case and looking inside it. Nobody does, right? At a store, but if you don't look inside it, you wouldn't know. So everything connects to the motherboard. When I look at a motherboard, the one thing that it connects to, and the first thing that it decides is our CPU, which we're going to say in a minute, is the central processing unit. That's what CPU stands for. Another test question, and anybody wanted to take notes on anything, that would be okay. Just remember our notebooks are open on all tests, okay? The CPU is the brains. And the motherboard has a specific socket, okay, that holds it. There's a bunch of different kinds of sockets which define a whole bunch of different kinds of CPUs. And it's always right at this kind of motherboard, and we'll talk a lot more about motherboards, that's laid out a specific way, always has the things that plug in the back, and then the CPU, and then the memory. And then these things are the things that are generally different. Okay? That is always the same, no matter how big the motherboard is. It has those back connectors, the CPU, and then some number of memory, and then all the rest of that depends on the motherboard. So the motherboard connects those things together. It holds the central processing unit, and everything, really, the whole purpose of the motherboard is to connect everything up to the CPU, because without the CPU, obviously, the motherboard would be worthless. It didn't have something to do all those calculations, okay? So the motherboard houses the CPU and serves as the conduit for everything that talks to it, okay? So that's the motherboard. The CPU, or central processing unit, is the brains. It's where a majority, and not all, it's a majority of the calculations happen on the central processing. A majority. There are other places on the motherboard that calculations happen. Okay. There are places like your video card where calculations happen. The video card, a good video card has its own processor, has its own memory, its own motherboard. And so when we look at a video card, video cards, just like computers, do a whole lot of processing. They have their own memory, they have their own heat sink on there to cool off the processor that's underneath their video card. But most of the processing happens on the CPU. So it's where processing takes place. Processing equals calculations. Where those take place. And it's measured in cycles. Okay, so how many cycles it can do of calculations per second. Okay, and so normally we look at, I'm going to deviate here, one cycle equals hertz, H-E-R-T-Z, abbreviated HC. Okay, 1,000 cycles is at kilohertz. 1 million cycles is in megahertz. 1 billion cycles per second is gigahertz. We're measuring CPUs today in gigahertz. In other words, it's doing, if you see a processor that says it's a 2.4 gigahertz processor, it's doing 2.4 billion computational cycles per second. Per second. It's a big number. Okay? It also means that when you go see the difference between, for instance, a 1.6 to a 2.4, that number looks really small, right? It's only 8 different, right? It's only 0.8 different, but that's 800 million cycles different. When you say 800 million, it sounds a lot bigger than 0.8 is. So when you upgrade a PC by a little number, it may not be a little number. It may be a ginormous number, just using a different frame of reference. So, for instance, your PCs, if you plug them into the wrong power supply, go from 2.4 gigahertz to 0.6 gigahertz. That's what the CPU rate changes. If I was to give you this power supply right here and have you plug it in to your PC, it would slow down the processor. The CPU would slow from 2.4 gig to 0.6 gig. It's really drastic how much that sucker will slow down. Okay? And that's because this power supply is too low wattage. And the CPU says, whoa, you don't have enough power for me, so I'll just slow down. Okay? We had when Mrs. Stewart was here, Miss Stewart, she would complain all the time about her PC. And we bring her laptop up here, and Mr. Anderson and I would test it. This PC's great. What is she always whining about? She's like, it's slow. And we're like, no, it's not. It's awesome. You're crazy. We take it back down and give it to her, and she'd click it back into her docking station. She had a 65 watt power supply. So every time she clicked it into her docking station, it would slow from 2.4 to 0.6. We didn't know she had a 65 watt power supply downstairs. And so every time we bring it up, we'd be like, you're crazy. And we could take it back down and give it back to her. And then eventually we figured out what was going on. But it took us actually quite a while. I'm not climbing under her desk. She's got hardwired up to her desk and stuff. Anyway, so CPUs can change speeds. They are capable of slowing down and speeding up on their own because of something like this. On your home PC, it'll do it because of heat. If you've got a PC at home that you never cleaned out, it's just totally gummed up with dust. And you guys know this other class that was blowing all these out.
Upon eruption, this time junior's last name starting with F through last name M. Please report to the middle school cafeteria for pictures of this
pause right here.
Junior's
Go
last
get your
name
pictures
F
before we go on.
through
But
M.
if
Thank you.
your PC is really dirty and it doesn't get airflow, it could be slowing down just because it's hot. I'm going to hit pause here. So we left off the central processing unit. CPUs go in a number of ways, and we'll learn more about that. But there are CPUs that have pins. Let me see if I got two that are relatively clean. Get a tissue so you can jump all over your hands. CPUs either have pins, which that one does. It's going into a socket, and that's what the CPUs go into. They go into different kinds of sockets, and there's about 20 different kinds of sockets out there that you can have. They either have pins, the gun I'm cleaning off is called thermal grease, which is made to help spread the heat out. Without it, PCs will just shut down.
Pardon me, teachers interruption. At this time, I need all remaining sophomores. Any sophomores that did not
So they either have pins or they have no pins. They have little dots like that one. And there are
also,
two.
I need freshmen, last names A through E, please. Freshmen A through E. Thank you.
There are two different manufacturers of CPUs that we'll learn about. The one that you guys probably do know about is. Is that it? No? I know I'm not key. No? Intel. Okay, there we go. So the one you guys probably see commercials about all the time is Intel, and right now almost all of our computers at National Trail have Intel processors. The other maker of processors that you're going to learn about is AMD, which actually got in the business because Intel hired them and paid them to get in the business because IBM made them. And AMD makes perfectly good processors. Most of our servers are actually AMD. Most of our PCs are Intel. And at my house, most of my stuff is AMD. How many AMD commercials have you guys seen? Probably about 0, okay? There are very few commercials that AMD puts out. Tech people know about AMD. You'll see AMD on the outside of a box, but they don't do a lot of commercials, which is why their prices stay lower than Intel's. So you can generally, you guys will do a whole research project on CPUs, you can generally get more for your money with an AMD processor. I say generally, because it's not always true, but so those are the two manufacturers of processors that we'll learn about when we go through and talk about processors. So the motherboard connects everything, the CPU is where the calculations take place, and the memory is where things are stored while those calculations are taking place. The CPU only really talks to the motherboard and does all its calculations in memory. Okay? Memory is really, really, really important to a computer. You can take the fastest processor in the world and don't give it enough memory to do its calculations with, and it will run like a piece of food. Okay? So while a CPU is working, it stores everything that it's working on in memory. Okay? It doesn't ever write to the hard drive. There's a controller that moves information from memory to the hard drive and now from the CPU. The CPU talks to memory, the memory talks to a controller that writes stuff to the hard drive. The more memory you have, the more the CPU can kind of keep in its head. Okay? The easiest way to think of it is if I had encyclopedias in the library that you could use during my test, you could use the notebook too. The notebook's your memory, the encyclopedia is the hard drive. And by the way, when you go to look at the encyclopedia, you can only look at one page and you have to come all the way back here. If it was the wrong page, too bad. You have to come back and sit down and you get to go walk over there again. How much faster is it if it's in your notebook? It's tons faster. It's in your notebook. So the CPU talks with memory. The memory is storage. For the CPU. It's where the CPU stores stuff. Now, it gets written to thousands of times a second. When you lose power, or have a power blurb, it's empty all of a sudden, okay? Which is why a little tiny power change, and all of a sudden, your computer's rebooting. And you're like, oh man. Well, because it just lost everything in memory, so it has to start all over, okay? This is refreshed thousands of times a second. When you lose power, it's gone. Okay, it's called volatile. In other words, you lose your power, it's empty. Which is why when we reboot a PC, like the young lady who just came in here, things mysteriously work. Okay? Because what happens is, as your computer runs programs get least memory. And what's supposed to happen is, Microsoft Word needs so much memory, and I give it to you, and when you're done, you give it back to me. Okay? Well, Microsoft has something called memory leakage. Memory's still there, but the term is called memory leakage, because a program will get the memory and then forget to give it back. And when it forgets to give it back, it slowly runs out of memory, and then a reboot, boop, and everything's fine. Okay? So, if you ever have a problem with, anybody watch IT Guys? Or IT Crowd? It's a BBC comedy. And if all he ever says is, did you reboot your computer? I mean, he has an answering machine that just says, did you turn your computer off or back on? Because 90% of the time it's all
interruption this time. Any freshman last names F through L? Should please report to the middle school cafeteria at this time.
And the reason 90% of the time it solves the problem is because something's gotten dorked up in memory, and you turn it off, turn it back on, memory's cleared, it's all fresh again, and everything works fine. Okay? So, you know, she's like, I can't log on, and she puts it down, and she just restarted it. I'm sure she felt silly, but that's what happens. And people will log off and log back on and think they did something, you did nothing. You log off and log back on. Everything that was wrong with memory is still wrong with memory. You have to restart in order to clear the memory. Okay? So memory is, it's called primary storage. But it's primary to the CPU. You can't store anything in memory. Okay? You store stuff to the hard drive. It's only primary to the CPU, and it's one of the most important things and the cheapest and easiest upgrade to a computer. Okay? If I look inside a PC and I see two open spots, like all these, and one of the nice things about all these PCs we got from the Air Force, they all have 4 memory spots in them, so they're easy upgrades. We have a lot of PCs, I don't know these in front of me, that are older, they only have 2 memory spots. And so if they're filled, it's more expensive to upgrade, because I have to basically throw away those 2, like 2 bigger ones. When I have 4 memory slots, 2 are going to use, it's easy, just buy 2 more and throw those in. So memory is storage for the CPU. It's where it saves calculations as they're going on. The CPU actually has a very small amount of its own memory to store stuff. That memory that's on the CPU we'll learn about is called cache. And the more cache a CPU has, the more memory it has on the die, on that little CPU that we just passed around. The less often it has to go to here, the faster it runs too. But in the absence of enough cache, it always has to go to here. And the more you have here, the faster your PC is going to run. Hard drive is where we store everything, okay? It's permanent storage, meaning that you have to delete it, it has to be erased. Power changes don't make things go away. But it's also called secondary storage because it's secondary to the CPU. The CPU doesn't want to store things there. It only wants to store things in RAM. I don't know if I said that. A memory is RAM, stands for random access memory, which really means when it's called RAM because it used to be memory kind of got written in linear order. Now it's wherever it's free, it can write to wherever it wants to on those RAM chips. It randomly writes to different places on the RAM chip, so it's called random access memory. This is secondary storage. It's secondary to CPU. That's the term you're going to see on the test. It's going to say match these, which ones are primary and secondary. Okay, so primary is RAM. I'm going to recalibrate. Primary is RAM because it's primary to the CPU. But that's also volatile and it goes away. Permanent storage is a hard drive, but it's secondary to the CPU. Okay, the faster our hard drive also increases the speed of our computer because what really happens is I have a CPU and a hard drive over here and RAM over here. CPU, what happens when the CPU requests something of RAM, it gets loaded from the hard drive into RAM, but the RAM can only hold so much, so things get swapped back and forth a lot between the hard drive and the RAM. The more RAM we have, the less swapping happens. Okay? So more RAM means it goes to the hard drive less. Like if you're a Skyrim player and you open up Skyrim and you've got 32 gig of RAM, it loads it into RAM and it never goes back to the hard drive. Because it all fits over here. But if you have a little bit, it's swapping all the time. And you'll see your hard drive brightness never stop going because you don't have enough memory to load the program in. So it takes apart and throws some back. It just keeps going like this all the time. And it does something also called virtual RAM, which is not RAM at all, but it's called virtual RAM. It takes a chunk of the hard drive and the RAM pretends that's RAM, and it just keeps swapping back and forth there and pretends that's memory. And the more that it has to use virtual RAM, the slower your PC runs. So my CPU has a huge impact on how fast I run. How much RAM I have has a big impact on how fast I run. And what kind of hard drive I have has a big impact on how fast I run. They all go together. It's not like you can go and buy one cool thing for a PC and say I just built a really fast PC. Oh, I didn't have money for a good hard drive. I put it all crap. Okay? So hard drives are where everything is stored. When I open up, turn on my computer, Windows loads. It's loading from the hard drive. Okay? It's where everything is permanently stored. Okay? So on my hard drive, I've got Windows or my OS, which just stands for operating system. And we're going to learn about different operating systems than Windows. I have some spare hard drives. We're going to pull our hard drives out, and we're going to install some other ones on some spare hard drives so you guys can see how to install operating systems and some different operating systems that you can install. But we use Windows. In fact, we use Windows 7, right? Windows has gone through a whole bunch of different operating systems. It holds Windows and it holds programs that we've installed, and it holds our data. Okay, so we load up Windows 7. We've got Office Audacity and Firefox and whatever, and then we store our data on the hard drive too. So the faster the hard drive is, the better it's going to run. You guys all have the fastest hard drives that they make. Okay, they don't make anything faster than a solid state drive. There are no moving parts in this at all. It's actually all memory that's in here. Okay, it's a different kind of memory than RAM, but it is memory. There's no moving parts in here at all. Whereas if we look at an older laptop drive, like the ones that we pulled out, this drive runs about 10 times slower than this drive. Okay, could be actually. But that's about how much slower, because this one, it doesn't have to look for data on a drive. A traditional drive has a disk and a seeker head and an actuator arm that has to move around and look for the data, and you'll hear sometimes a clacking sound in your computer while your seeker head's trying to find whatever. There's no secret, it just reads it. Okay. Oop, I got it. Okay. Whereas here it's got to first find it. There's rates called seek rates to find the data, and then there are read rates, how fast it can read the data, and then there are transfer rates, how fast it can transfer the data from here to the motherboard. And this one's still got a transfer rate. This one can't transfer any faster than this one, but it finds it basically instantaneously. Okay. So that one of the reasons we also put these in here was not for speed, although it's a nice advantage. But they're really hardy. You know, if you take this one's spinning. This one spins at 5,400 revolutions per minute. Okay. You ever take a bicycle tire and spin it and move the wheel? You get that torque. Well, that's what happens inside it. It's spinning really, really, really fast. Laptops aren't actually made to. They were never intended to be moved while running. Ever. They're a portable PC. They're intended to be set down and turned on and turned off. Even the act of taking a regular PC and turning it off and throwing it in your bag and throwing your hard drive. Because the hard drive there's no break. It's going 5,400 revolutions per minute. It's going to take a couple minutes for that to stop. And if you all of a sudden take this, close it up, throw it in your bag, and still spin it, and this is a slow one by 400 slow, but the nicer ones that were the other ones were 7,200, so it's spinning at 7,200 revolutions per minute. That's another 1,500 just slows it. Okay, but that's still spinning really fast, and you go and toss your laptop in your bag, and all of a sudden Windows isn't working. All of a sudden you lost something. Okay, or permanently lost the hard drive because there's no moving parts in these. That's why I said I want to do the laptop thing, but I'm only doing it with solid state drives. Because I can say in that meeting all day long, hey guys, you have to turn them off 2 minutes before the end of class. Let them spin down before you pick them up and put them in your bag. First of all, nobody heard me. Everybody's going laptop. I get to go get a laptop.
Pardon me, teachers, the remainder of the freshmen, please. The remainder of the freshmen over to have their pictures taken.
Like when I said your H drive won't work, you have to go to mobile.nationaltrail.us. I've gotten 100 emails. My H drive doesn't work at home. No, I said that in class. I said you have to go to mobile.nationaltrail.us. Nobody was listening. The reason I wanted these is because they're going to last. Because you go and close that, put it in your bag, there's no moving part. That's not going to hurt by doing it. It's running. So that's why solid state drives. The only way I wanted to go for you guys. So not only are they faster, but they're hardier. However, there is a downside to a solid state drive. You know, each part of this drive can only be written to so many times. There's a shelf life. How long I can use this? It's not going to be around. You guys use it for 4 years. But I think we're going to replace them in 4 years. We're going to start replacing this because they will just start to. It's going to look like random failures, but there are going to be spots on here that just can't write to because it's overused. Solid state. And they're smart. They try to only write to sections that haven't been written before. Anyway, so the hard drive is where we store this stuff. The better the hard drive, the faster Windows load. The better the hard drive, the faster our programs load. The faster it saves, the faster it shuts down. If you put a side-by-side comparison with one of the 5400 speed drives and the solid state drives, it's a pretty substantial difference. And when we did it with the teacher PCs, it was crazy. Literally, the teacher PC PCs, these quad cores took about 4 minutes to get all the way loaded and up with a regular drive, the solid state, 35 seconds. So it's crazy how much nicer a solid state drive can make your PC. And they come down in cost. Hard drives used to be really expensive. My first hard drive that I got, 40 megs. Just realize how small that is. Okay. Everything, by the way, everything, we use the same nomenclature for everything. We use, in hard drives, we're talking about bytes, right? And kilobytes is 1,000. Mega is 1,000,000. This will be on the test, by the way. Giga is 1,000,000,000. Tera is 1,000,000,000,000. Okay, so my first hard drive was 40 megabytes. Okay, my flash drive on my keychain drive on my keychain is 32 gigabytes. Okay, all those hard drives are 64 gigabytes. My first hard drive was really, really small. I was really excited. It was a big drive at the time. It's just pathetic now. You know, these original IBM PCs that I've got underneath the printer over there, that didn't even have a hard drive. All it had was these floppy drives in it that everything ran off. So if I get the floppy out, there we go. All they had were these floppy drives that had 128 kilobytes on it. And that ran this program. You can't even save a Word file. It's small anymore. It's crazy. But hard drives have gotten less and less and less expensive. When solid states came out, they were really ridiculously expensive. And now we end up getting these for you guys for like $50, $60. Which, if you had a computer at home, you felt like it was a little slow. Which I did this for my kids. I got them a small solid state drive. I put the operating system on it so that it starts up like that. And then they've got another drive that they save all their games and stuff to. So that's the hard drive. It's where we store everything. We have optical drives, and those are kind of sort of starting to go away, right? We still, and I say optical because we have CD-ROMs, we have DVDs, and we have Blu-rays. And now anymore, it's really kind of hard to find a CD player. There's almost no reason to have it. They're so small anymore because a CD only holds 650 megabytes of data, and a DVD, depending on the DVD, holds 5.4 gigabytes of data. And I couldn't even tell you how big how much data it holds because I don't have one. So we have optical drives. The reason we kind of need them is to install software, but there are so many things anymore that they expect you to have an online connection. My son has Lego Marvel Superheroes. Okay, we got the disc. Did one thing off the disc. Put in the disc, it said connect to Steam, you log into Steam, and it downloads it. I'm like, what do I have this DVD in the tray for? Nothing. I didn't need the DVD in the tray at all. I don't even know why they even sell discs anymore. Because the download was like 10 gig, it was bigger than a DVD, so I don't know if the DVD just had like a little starter thing on it or something. But we like them for music, but how many people buy DVDs? Anybody here buy DVDs? Download it, right? You go on iTunes and you buy it, or you go on Amazon and you buy it there. You buy the one track that you like, or you buy the whole albums on iTunes, depending on what you use. And obviously, you're all doing it legally and paying for any music that you have on your devices. Yes, of course we're doing it legally. But most people don't buy it. I mean, I have a lot of DVDs, but I have them all ripped to a music folder now. Because who wants to go and pull out a DVD and stick it in? And I've got a big 300 disc DVD changer in my stereo system that holds all my DVDs. I can go and pick who I want to listen to, and it'll spool the thing around. I can actually. I can do random music list, but then it's sitting there spinning around and pulling out another DVD and then spinning around. So much nicer just to have it over there, right? So we kind of still need optical drives, but almost not anymore. Really nice, small, thin form factor laptops do not have them, right? If you look at the nice, new, thin MacBook Pros or the new IBM ones, the ones that are really thin, they don't even have optical drives in them anymore. But we have to have external ones because we still have to install stuff. We don't use those. So they're still a permanent storage. And they're still considered secondary. What other kind of storage can you think of that's permanent and secondary? You use all the time, right? You guys have flash drives. Most people don't have a flash drive anymore. We stopped buying them for you guys and supplying them in Computer One because there really wasn't a reason to. With the tablets and with the HTTP Commander, which is what that software is really to do, and your H drive from home. Why did we need to give you a flash drive when you could get to it? And those few people that don't have internet connection, why make you pay $15 for a flash drive if you have the internet and you don't? It's cheaper instead of charging you. You would buy one for yourself. So optical drives, and then we got flash drives that are also the same kind of thing that are permanent storage. And this is just we're going to recalibrate. You ever see a teacher calibrating? It's not where you touch; it's where you remove the pen and it calibrates. I see a lot of teachers trying to do this to get it right on. It's easier just to slide it up to the middle of the X when you remove it, and you get the calibration right. Okay, so that's it on an intro to optical drives, and then we've got video cards. Video cards give us our display, right? Give us our display. It's what our monitors are hooked up to, and there's a huge range of video cards. Sometimes they're integrated. All these laptops have integrated video cards. There's video cards on the board. Actually, there are some of you guys that have better, or I shouldn't say better, different laptops than they all look the same. Some of those laptops have faster processors and integrated video cards. Some of them have slower processors, but a really nice video card, which is why you might open yours right next to the person next to you, and theirs looks totally different because they have a different video card.
Teacher Party Interruption. At this time, just a last call for any student, grades 9, 10, and 11 who have not gotten their picture taken. Now would be the time to do so. Also, staff members, if you've not yet gotten your picture taken, we need to get that taken care of by today. If we can, by the end of this block. If you have not gotten your picture taken, please contact me down here in the office so that we can make arrangements to get that taken care of. But again, we need to get that done because they're going to be switching their cameras to middle school. So again, any staff member that has not gotten the picture taken, again, we do have a new photographer, so everybody needs to get it done today. Please call either extension 1200 or 1202. Thanks.
Okay, video cards can be the most important thing in your computer if you're a gamer. If you're not a gamer, it's the least important thing in your computer. I see Word looks great, it's clear, I type my finger. Okay? Integrated video cards for a laptop are fine because most of them cannot push good games no matter what you do. If you buy the nicest laptop from Alienware, it's going to play a good game for about a year until the game gets better than the video card. You can't replace a video card on a laptop. In a PC, almost all the PCs we have integrated video cards, meaning they're part of the motherboard, and all these things right here are part of the motherboard. The integrated video card is a poopy video card. It's great for doing Office. It's great for working on an image or something, but it's not great for watching movies sometimes. It's pretty bad. And for instance, I've got one of these, one just like this, mounted behind my TV at home in one of my rooms of the house, and the video card on this, the Netflix, you can go into Netflix settings if you didn't know. You can turn down the video resolution. I have to have it turned down all the way for Netflix to play without stopping all the time. And it's not my internet connection, it's actually the video card on the PC. It is a PC. cards can have, well, they do. They always have their own processor. Okay. They have a, instead of a CPU, they have a GPU. What do you think that stands for? If the CPU is for central processing unit, this is the, what do you think the G stands for? Graphics processing unit, okay? It has a graphics processing unit that compiles and makes the video that comes out to our monitor, okay? It also has memory that has to use. Well, it might have memory that has to use, okay? In the case of this integrated video card, there is no memory. It's just part of the motherboard. So where does it get its memory? It has to have memory. It steals RAM from the motherboard. Okay? So if you put it in 2 gig of RAM and you have an integrated video card, it might say something like, when I go to my properties in my computer, okay? Let's see. When I go to my properties on my computer, which you guys can do by hitting Windows pause break. Now, mine, I have a lot more memory, okay? So I have 12 gig of mine. But it says I have this much RAM, but only this usable. So if we go to Windows pause break on yours, because yours definitely has one that steals it from the RAM, you're going to see that you, oh, no, you know, you got one of the better video cards. So if we can find one that's still in RAM. Oh, you got one of the better video cards too. You just hit Windows function and then pause break. You still see all yours too, so maybe all you guys have a better video card too. But you'll see that how much is usable, and the usable number will always be less than that if your video is stealing RAM from the motherboard, because it's stealing, and mine is stealing some, okay? So it might have one number here that's installed and a different number here that's usable because the video card doesn't have its own RAM, or it's stealing some portion of the RAM in order to work. So it's, in mine it's stealing very little because I have a decent one. And this, in the case of this video card that the teachers have, this has a processor, and it has very, very, very little memory on this one. This one will steal another half a gig. It actually has 512 on here. This is listed as a 1 gig video card. It's a lie, because it has half a gig, and it steals half a gig. So all together, it needs to use a full gig, but it's stealing some of it from the motherboard. So if you have a low-end video card, and by the way, an add-on is almost always better than any integrated card you're going to get on the PC. Okay? Because even if it steals memory, now it's got a separate processor, it usually has some memory, and it might steal a little memory, but on the case of an integrated one like this, it's always stealing everything. There's no memory that it's not stealing, because there's nothing extra on here. So the nicer video card you get has more memory, it can do more computations per minute, it might have additional graphics outputs, okay? These are, on a video card, these are called analog and these are called digital. Digital way better than analog, okay? If you're going to hook up to the same monitor, and you can hook up here or you can hook up here, that's the right one to go with, okay? And when you look at most of the monitors we have at National Trail, they have, you can see the inputs on this one, they're so down in it. How about we just believe me, there's both underneath there. Oh, maybe my spare one. They have both kind of connections underneath there. They have both an analog and a digital connection. Can you see it on this one a little better? I have both an analog and a digital connection there. And what we've done with those is we've gone and done just the wrong thing, but it was the cheap thing at the time. Is instead of connecting up a digital connector, we would use these to turn digital into analog. Plug this into the digital connector and plug the analog in the back. We did that because the cables were really expensive at the time, and we didn't have any digital cables. There was one digital cable in the entire school district until this summer. So okay, but this summer we got 2 boxes of digital video cables from the Air Force for free. They were in the trash bin, literally in the trash bin. Bin throwing them out to here. And they have a huge wire still in the wrapper. I'm in there up to here. I lost the sheet. I had to dig it out because I'm in there going through wires. Just he's sitting there with a box going like this, you know, catching DVI cables as I'm throwing them out. So digital is better, and we're going to go and switch all those teacher ones. And we're going to take off all those adapters and we're going to put DVI cables on. And we'll be doing that. If we don't get to it by the time you guys get the video, you guys will be going around doing that when you're on the video section. Okay? Because I don't know if the advanced technical kids will have a chance. So it creates the video output. Yeah. I do that every time I think. Okay. It creates our video output. It has a processor of its own called the GPU, or the graphics processing unit. It needs memory. A video card, for all intents and purposes, is its own computer anymore. In fact, this video card, with this limited amount of memory that it has, is better than that computer was when it came out. It has faster processing power by probably a power of 5. It has more memory by like a power of 100. I think that has like 2K of RAM in it. I thought that was but they are, for themselves, they are their own kind of computers. Whose the whole point of it is to make this video output for us to see. And whether we hook it up to a monitor, whether we hook it up to a projector, it doesn't really matter. That's the purpose of our video card. It makes a huge change on our ability to play games in particular. Okay, putting Microsoft Word in front of you. Huh? No, it's not like from a game or anything. It's just a really cool picture. We unlocked so you guys can customize the desktop. You know, it used to be locked, and it was like unlocked. I'm like, why not? It's your laptop. I don't care what you have going on. Okay, care what you have on your background or how you guys want to set it up and stuff. Anyway, so the other things that we have when we look at a motherboard, in fact, I'm going to go back to a motherboard picture here. When we look at a motherboard, we have integrated stuff that are part of the motherboard that are this back panel here. And then we can add expansion things. And this is kind of the part that when I go and look at a motherboard or a PC that I'm going to buy at Walmart, and I'm not trying to slam a PC that I bought at Walmart. I bought stuff for my business there before and then taken them out of the crappy case and put them in a nice case and added stuff on. But these expansion slots here decide the extra things that I can add, like what kind of video card can I add, what kind of network interface card, and that's what a NIC stands for, network interface card can I add. Because maybe that integrated one on there is just okay. Okay? Because speeds of network cards can go from 100 megabits per second, can go 1,000 megabits per second, or gig speed, and they can go at 10,000 now megabits per second, which is really expensive. You don't have any of those in school. But if you had only a 100 meg connection, you wanted to put in 1,000, you could add a network card if you had the right kind of motherboard. We're going to stop right there, and I'll see you guys in 2 days.